As NCDC confirmed more COVID-19 cases in Nigeria, federal government relaxes lockdown in Lagos, Ogun and the FCT.
And gradual easing of lockdown measures in FCT, Lagos and the Ogun states effective from Monday, 4th of May 2020.
President Buhari signs proclamation order on management of COVID-19.
National Assembly to reconvene plenary today after 6 weeks of COVID-19 recess.
The time we are in, there is need for us to do something better than what the Quarantine Act specified. So we are going to be coming up with what we call Control of Infectious Disease Bill.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss COVID-19 and food security, plus a review of the latest presidential broadcast.
For about a month now, since Nigeria reported her index case of COVID-19, economic activities including agriculture and other related matters suffer a setback, especially when farmers are about to start preparing for the 2020 farming season.
Now, this followed the restriction of movement, which invariably has affected the agricultural value chain, as farmers have no adequate access to agricultural inputs such as seeds and fertilizers, as well as a shortage of labor to facilitate cultivation.
Now, with the continuous lockdown, Nigeria's food reserve is being depleted day by day as federal government continues to distribute food grains from the strategic reserve as palliative to the vulnerable members of the society to cushion the effects of the lockdown.
Well, as the government keeps providing the palliatives from the strategic grains reserves, there is the risk, some experts say, of a rapid depletion of the reserves as the country is not producing enough to replace what is being taken out due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has deprived farmers of the opportunities of engaging in agricultural activities, thereby, as it were, threatening the nation's food security.
So worried over the situation, President Muhammadu Buhari constituted a committee to work out modalities to cushion the effects of the pandemic on 2020 farming season.
In addition, the committee has been set up to facilitate the movement of foodstuff as well as agricultural inputs nationwide so that production activities will continue in order to avoid shortages and ensure that the 2020 production season is not hampered.
Innocuously, the president is not the only personality that is worried over the looming food crisis as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. The Food and Agriculture Organization and other experts describe COVID-19 as a threat to food security due to its negative effects on agricultural production and research.
One question to ask is, how has COVID-19 affected agriculture and by extension food security in Nigeria? Now, how will this impact on the agricultural value chain? What impact will coronavirus and the lockdown that has accompanied it also have on the 2020 cropping season? And how might the negative effects of all of this be mitigated? It's good to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria this Tuesday morning. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Jumwa Yusuf saying thanks for staying with us. We're also reaching you live on the Nexus service of the NTA and from the nation's capital, Abuja.
Now, aside from food security as well as COVID-19, we shall be reviewing the latest presidential broadcast, which is the third in the series with regard to the restriction order on account of COVID-19.
We shall also bring you some of our complimentary segments of the program, but let's join Usman Aliwu for the morning news. Good morning, Usman.
Good morning. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari says the restriction of movements in Lagos, Ogun and FCT will be gradually relaxed from Monday, 4th of May 2020. This was based on the recent realities and recommendations by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. The president, in a nationwide broadcast, however, explains that such relaxations will be guided by certain measures to be put in place.
In line with the recommendation of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, the various federal government committees that have reviewed socio-economic matters and the Nigerian Governors Forum, I have approved a phased and gradual easing of lockdown measures in FCT, Lagos, and Ogun states effective from Monday, 4th of May 2020.
Meanwhile, President Buhari has signed a proclamation order on the management of COVID-19 in Lagos, Ogun, Kano, FCT and other states. The signing of the proclamation order came shortly after his national broadcast. A statement from the special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Femi Adesina, says the action was an exercise of the powers conferred on president by Section 3 of the Quarantine Act, Cap Q2 laws of the Federation 2004, and all powers enabling him in that behalf. And as at 11:20 p.m. Monday, 27th April 2020, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) announced 64 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria, increasing the total number of confirmed cases to 1,337. Out of the 64 new cases, 34 are in Lagos, 15 in FCT, 11 in Borno, 2 in Taraba and Gombe states each. 255 patients have been discharged with 40 deaths recorded. The federal government has announced special COVID-19 incentives and allowances for the frontline health workers. Under the new package, health workers in federal government teaching hospitals, medical centers, as well as designated COVID-19 isolation and treatment centers are to be paid 50% of the consolidated basic salary.
Hazard and inducement allowance of 50% of the consolidated basic salary is to be paid to all health workers in federal government teaching hospitals and federal medical centers to last for the first 3 months in the first instance. B, 40% of the consolidated basic salary will be paid as special COVID-19 hazard and inducement allowance to health workers at special non-public hospitals and clinics. In the interim, government agrees to grant extension of service for a period of 3 months in the first instance for health workers retiring within the COVID-19 period.
The National Assembly is to reconvene plenary today after 6 weeks of recess due to COVID-19 threat. The legislators will be considering issues bordering on coronavirus pandemic. Statements by clerks of both chambers say the representatives will begin plenary by 10 o'clock in the morning with much observance of social distancing.
Something better than what the Quarantine Act specified. So we are going to be coming up with what we call Control of Infectious Disease Bill.
As mysterious deaths continue in the ancient city of Kano, the cause of the calamity is yet to be ascertained. At one of the cemeteries visited, 28 people were buried within 24 hours. Also on Sunday, the Bayero University Kano lost 2 of its professors, and most of the deaths are said to have no connection to coronavirus.
18 and above, that every day.
We are afraid. People are just dying. This morning alone, we buried 11 people and more are coming.
And that's the morning news now. The program continues with Kingsley and Jumai after this break. Stay with us.
It's time to take responsibility. So I'm staying home, watching videos and learning as well. We are all aware of the pandemic hitting the world today. The COVID-19 virus is real. A big thank you to all our health workers, doctors, nurses, everybody fighting this pandemic in their own way. Please stay home, save lives. Prevention is better than cure. Stay responsible.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
The main way coronavirus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
City Hot. Let's go, guys.
Babe.
Yeah?
Would you please turn on your hotspot?
Okay, there you go. My lady. Ladies boy. Hey, hold this guy down.
Password, please.
0808.
Baby girl, you are 1 in a million.
Babe.
Yeah. And if you need them, I go find them.
You have a message.
From you, maybe. Read it out now. Read it out to my ears.
Nobody.
Free your mind with Airtel Smart Talk and enjoy calls to all networks at a flat rate of 11 kobo per second. Dial *315# to join.
Fine girl. Can I have your phone, man?
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Did you know that using bar soap and water protects against viruses? Many viruses are surrounded by an envelope with receptors that enable them to enter a human cell and cause infection. Bar soap destroys the outer layer of the virus and effectively removes it and reduces your chances of contracting the virus. Protect your family from the spread of viruses. Wash your hands using bar soap and water. Brought to you by Medifax and Dettol.
Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1, a delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water. Available in stores at 18 naira.
Welcome back. Now, there might be a silver lining for businesses amidst COVID-19 as they begin to search for new ways of bringing goods and services to the people at the conveniences of their homes. These are more on Business News with Abdul Karim Surmi.
It has been most challenging to businesses in general around the world. The necessary lockdown of cities and countries has hit various places and has stopped the world in its tracks. However, there may be a silver lining to it. For internet and video calling services, it has pushed workers and businesses to better utilize their home space and effectively work from home. This has not only proved possible, but could also be a changing point for businesses and organizations alike. One certainty is that change will be a defining factor to push these businesses forward post-COVID-19 and could be a new surefire way to adhere to the wants of consumers.
For instance, delivery. Some people never used to do deliveries. Some restaurants never used to do delivery, home deliveries. But now they have to take advantage of the times. It's basically time and season. So this is the season to take advantage of the technology that has been made available. All right. So if you are in the restaurant business, if you're in the cooking business, right? So it is time to have a website. You have to have a platform online where your clients get to see your presence and they know, okay, hey, I can order for these things and I get it. But of course, it comes at a cost. I mean, you won't begin to make so much profit initially, but then when you get your processes right, of course, it is a new dimension. And the few people that take advantage of this and they do it well will come out successful after this lockdown.
Now let's head to the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange to see how the market fared on Monday, 27th of April, 2020. With business news, Abdul Karim Zurmi.
Many thanks, Abdul Karim, for the business package. Coming up next is a newspaper review.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Tilby, is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Juma. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley.
Hi, Bayo.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we have like two papers today to review. I will begin with the Punch newspaper. Above the masthead, LCCI, NECA, Penkerson demand stimulus packages, PIB passage. You find that story on page 24. Be ready to pay higher for fuel. That's coming from PPPRA. Find that story on page 21. With distributed NAFDAC certified rice, FGTEL states. That story is on page 24. IMF may approve Nigeria's 3.4 billion loan today. You find that story on page 29. And just below the masthead, we have President Buhari declares interstate lockdown as nationwide curfew begins Monday, with riders shuts down Kano for 2 weeks. OK's extension in Lagos, Ogun, and the FCT. Lockdown will fail without effective testing, warns Jonathan. Let my father rest in peace, Abba Kyari's daughter tells critics. And the picture story you're seeing there, donors, security men, and beneficiaries during the distribution of COVID-19 palliative at Government Day Secondary School Duse Alaji in Abuja. That was on Sunday. At the bottom plate of the Punch newspaper, the communication chairman tests positive for COVID-19. That is Raymond Dokpesi Jr., chairman. That's the son of the owner of AIT. Fear in FCT Custodial Center as inmate dies. You find that story on page 13. My CSO died of coronavirus, declares Tinubu. That story is on page 12. Benue extends partial lockdown indefinitely. Find that story on page 8. Gombe sends 700 Almajiris back to home states. With Rider, Kano Almajiri returnees among 5 Kaduna positive cases. That story is on page 2 and 7. Task force hunts for 3 fleeing Kano coronavirus patients. You find that story on page 2.
Okay, let's take a look also at the Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun, there's an earpiece there, which is beside the nameplate. 3 coronavirus patients run away in Kano as state records 2 more deaths. With a rider, 40-year-old patient delivers baby girl in Lagos. Details are inside the paper. Now, the lead story comes with a kicker as Lagos, FCT, and Ogun total movement restriction ends Sunday. Buhari okays gradual easing of lockdown from Monday. And you have a number of riders to that headline. It says total movement restriction now from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Passenger interstate travel banned till further notice. Compulsory use of face mask in public, and social and religious gatherings still restricted. Total lockdown in Kano for 2 weeks, and there's protests in Lagos. Details inside. And the photograph you see there, it says a fuel tanker that caught fire at the NNPC retail outlet at College Road in Ogba, Lagos yesterday. There's a headline below that. It says over 10 vehicles and shops destroyed as fire gulls NNPC station in Lagos. And Wike, as Rivers governor, confirms new cases, orders deportation of Almajiris and others. And in the meantime, Obiano lifts lockdown in Anambra. Details on page 26. Ailing senators barred as National Assembly reconvenes. With the rider, House of Reps resumes sitting to hold one session weekly. That's on page 7. Palliative rice, good for consumption, according to the federal government. Details on page 6. Bayo.
Thank you. Well, let's start with the president broadcast yesterday, a repeat of which you heard just a while ago. Since it will be discussed after this review, there's no need to go into details other than to emphasize that the lockdown that started last week is likely to end, is going to end by Monday. And thereafter, we'll now go into a period of overnight curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. There's now ban on non-essential interstate travel. However, there is a partial and controlled interstate movement for goods and services. This is to allow the economy to continue to thrive. Meanwhile, wearing of face masks in the public has now become mandatory, and therefore we are also expected to observe physical distancing, personal hygiene. Also, restrictions still remain on religious activities. At the time the president made the broadcast, the number of cases we had was 1,273, and there were 40 deaths. Between that time and this morning, we have now had 64 new cases, bringing the total now to 1,337. The interesting thing is that Lagos is still leading with about 764, followed closely by the Federal Capital Territory, 151. But it is interesting to note that states that joined the queue just recently, like Borno now has 41. Kano, that came in barely a week ago, has registered about 77, and it's likely to be more because of the closure. We now didn't have a test since Friday up till about yesterday. I understand tests are supposed to resume with effect from yesterday. Gombe, that came in just only last week, now has 37, and this is confirming the fact that community transmission is becoming endemic. Kano also featured in the president broadcast. With immediate effect, 2 weeks lockdown has been ordered in Kano. Meanwhile, the president has directed that there will be deployment of human, material, and technical support to help Kano. You will recall that there has been cases of inexplicable deaths recently in Kano. By some coincidence, the same pattern has also been reported in Ghana. Ghana had allowed about 3 weeks of release of the lockdown, and all of a sudden there were deaths and they had to go back to lockdown. I monitored the station in Ghana yesterday, and they have identified that attention was given to COVID-19 and neglecting that there was meningitis also fighting on the ground. Incidentally, Kano, like that northern part of Ghana and other places, are within the meningitis belt in the sub-Saharan region. So it would be good to look at meningitis as a possible culprit. Meanwhile, the good news that Kingsley read about is a mother of 40 that delivered of a baby girl while being in isolation for COVID-19 treatment. The professor in charge says the baby is doing well, and there are no possible indications that the baby could be positive. But nevertheless, to play safe, the baby will be tested. The baby and mother will be put in a separate ward and in a separate room from all. Meanwhile, while the lockdown is still ongoing, in Lagos, 620 persons were arrested and arraigned before mobile courts. In the Federal Capital Territory, the Commissioner of Police, Bala Chiroma, reported 1,909 violations and about 1,736 have been convicted by 13 mobile courts. Away from the COVID-19 now, the Punch is indicating that the International Monetary Fund is likely to approve $3.4 million as a loan for Nigeria. It may be recalled that the Minister for Finance, Budget and National Planning indicated 3 weeks ago the interest of Nigeria to apply for assistance to the IMF. 102 countries had actually applied to the IMF. The Managing Director of IMF, Christiana Georgieva, says that Nigeria's economy has suffered a double jeopardy, one from COVID-19 as well as the fall in oil prices. And she also indicated that Nigeria has handled COVID-19 very well and is likely to be among the benefits. You recall the story we read late last week where 2 journalists were banned for life. That ban has been unlifted. The Commissioner of Information in Ebonyi State lifted that supposed life ban. However, the attack on journalists is not only peculiar in Nigeria. The International Press Institute has reported that for every 5 days, 1 journalist is killed around the world for doing their job. Presently, with the advent of the COVID-19, as many as 104 journalists have already come under one form of attack or assault around the world. In Africa, 22 journalists have been attacked for doing their job. In Harare, a journalist was forced to lie down and he was battered by security men. In Nigeria, we have had 9 cases of journalists being battered for doing their job during this COVID-19. I think the NUJ and the Guild of Editors should take this up seriously. You will recall what happened to Menere Amakiri. He was assaulted by a military governor. The Newspaper Proprietary Association, led by Lateef Jakande, went to court. At the end of the day, that journalist was awarded damages. I think the power of authority should be exercised with a lot of restraint. Otherwise, if you target journalists, journalists are professionals. They are not citizen journalists who, through whim and caprices, publish any information. When information is published and it is not correct, that journalist owe you a duty, give him the correct perspective, and he has it at a principle and by the code to publish it. If they fail, there are steps to take through the editor and also through the Nigerian Press Council. Nobody should take the laws into their hand to assault journalists.
Right, Bayo, I mean, certainly, I mean, very well said. In terms of what journalists, should do and should be allowed to do in the course of their duties. Now, the unbanning of the 2 journalists in Ebonyi State, of course, it was hilarious in the sense that there's no way anybody could have said, look, those journalists were being banned for life. It was impossible. But the governor also made an understatement that was reported late last week, that those who do not wear face masks in public will have a koboko on their backs. I think that if it's a joke, probably it's a joke now being taken too far. So that's that. But the president's broadcast, as we said, is an issue that we're going to discuss. But the restriction on movement, which is like a curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., might require a special dispensation for a place like Lagos. If you say people should be indoors by 8, I'm sure that you have the whole of Third Mainland Bridge that you have to probably commit to prison or commit to a detention center, considering the traffic jam that you're likely to have.
Yes.
All right, Bayo Atoyebe, thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you.
We'll see you again tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break. Now, when we return, we'll get ahead with 2 topics for discussion.
The coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person, who affects 2 persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the 2 persons have affected 4, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
Welcome, dear. Have you washed your hands?
Inside my house again. This thing not the key black man.
I don't know if it's misinformation or poor hygiene that will kill you first. Coronavirus is real, and good hygiene practice will save your life. Anyway, no hand washing, no eating.
I will not take care of it. I was one of the parents. Coronavirus is real and it's on the rise. But you can help yourself and help others to be safe. Remember, we can stop the spread. It's in your hands.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from...
The month of Ramadan is here again, and we at Al-Habibiyah Islamic Society once again call on all faithful to observe the physical and social distancing directive of the government to curb the spread of COVID-19. Always wash your hands with soap and water, use hand sanitizers and face masks when necessary, and stay at home. Observe your obligatory salat, tarawih, tahajjud, du'as, and askars with your families from the comfort of your home. Stay at home, stay safe, stop the spread of COVID-19. This message is from Al-Habibiyah Islamic Society, from Allah to you, a light.
I just don't understand this coronavirus thing. Is it real?
See, coronavirus, known as COVID-19, it's a global problem and has killed thousands of people in China, Italy, Spain, UK, US, and other countries around the world.
Okay. Now, why are they saying that we should stay home?
Because if you go outside and get in contact with someone who is infected, you become infected and then come back home, affect your family. That's how it happens in other countries.
Now, please, help me explain what this social distance is all about.
See, as we are now, the virus travels through the air and by touch. We must maintain 6 foot distance at all times.
Oh, so it's not by washing my hands with soap and water or hand sanitizer that is only important?
Washing of our hands regularly is very important. But we must come together and fight this virus like we did Ebola. It is our responsibility to each other.
And I've got this very important message for you guys. Stay at home. No. Stay safe. Noruma. This is the right thing to do at this time. And don't forget, remember to wash your hands. Sachasia kage samaya sama, sachasia isia kage ofuma. Together, we'll beat this thing. Are you ready now? Are you ready, man?
In this time of despair, our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this virus doom our very existence, then what have we gained? This is the call to every Nigerian to unite as one and stop the spread of this deadly virus. Stay at home and stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't move unless we move. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Yesterday, President Muhammadu Buhari made a nationwide broadcast following the expiration of the 2-week extension of the restriction order earlier imposed on the Federal Capital Territory, Lagos and Ogun states. The number of issues the president raised in the broadcast, which we repeated just up till about 40 minutes ago, and it's one of the topics that we are discussing this morning. With us in the studios, let's welcome Honorable Ahmad Sajo, Public Affairs Analyst and one-time Commissioner for Information in Adamawa State. Honorable Sajo, pleasure to have you with us on the program. Give us your take on the key points of the president broadcast.
I think the way I look at the broadcast is like the citizens had set an exam question paper for the president, and the president had provided them with answers. The first thing is that the citizens would have wanted to know whether the president is actually, feeling the pains they're going through. And he started right from the onset that he really understands that this decision that he has taken is very painful to the citizens. But he acknowledged that the citizens were resilient and they were patriotic, and they complied, based on their resilience and patriotism. The citizens wanted to know if the president understands that they're going through some misapplication of the order by a few security personnel. And the president came out openly and said, look, he understands that this happens and that steps are going to be taken to bring people to book. The citizens wanted to know from the president whether he understands the risk that caregivers, health workers, frontline health workers are going through. And he also said, yes, he understands that, and he rolled out the incentives that they've been put together and to ensure that they are protected and they are rewarded adequately, including an insurance in case something happens. The citizens wanted to find out from their president whether he understands that this thing had negative impact on certain aspects of our social existence, and he said yes, the economy had suffered adversely and is going to continue to suffer as a result. Yes, there may be food security issues if we don't take proactive steps. So these are answers the president provided. Then he went a step further and said, look, he is going to relax the order in Lagos, Ogun and the FCT. But he extended, he gave a window of 1 week. And it is necessary, it's absolutely necessary, because there are going to be guidelines. And those guidelines may require, enlightenment before they are allowed, before they are rolled out and people get out. He also realized that social distancing, though important, may be a bit difficult in the night. So he had imposed a curfew for the night. And so in all, what the president has been able to do is to answer to some of the key questions the citizens are asking through some stakeholder engagements, through writings, through discussions, through the social media. And I think overall, the speech, the broadcast of the president, hit the nail on the head. I mean, it really spoke for the period, it spoke for the season, it addressed the concerns. But again, look at it. He gave statistics of the situation. And as scary as the numbers were getting, the president told Nigerians that, look, do not be scared. The projections we had was far higher than this. God in his infinite mercy had saved us from those projections. We should continue to give our all to ensure that we don't get to that level where some people are predicting that African roads would have corpses lying on them. He took a very drastic step on Kano. And you have to understand Kano. Kano is one of the most populous states. Along with Lagos, they are the most populous, and they are the most commercially active locations in the country. And Kano is a hub. It impacts commercially on all the northern states and even down to the south. And then Kano has one of the highest population densities in this country. And so if there is an outbreak that is uncontrolled in Kano, it will affect a wider area. So that's why he took these drastic measures on Kano. And I think we need to control Kano. Just as we're getting our acts together in Lagos, we need to get our acts together in Kano so that these centers of high population, these centers of high commercial activity, these centers of high social interactions do not in themselves become centers for the spread of the COVID-19 to other areas in the country.
Talking about Kano, we just saw burials there and there were a lot of people at the burial ground. Do you think they would comply with the 2 weeks lockdown completely so that they bring down the numbers?
I think it's in their own interest, you know. Like I said, if you look at the index cases, the index case in my state, for example, of Adamawa, was somebody who traveled from Kano. The index case in Gombe, the index cases in Gombe also traveled from Kano. Certain index cases in northern states were people who traveled from Kano. You know, Kano people must realize that they're not just protecting themselves, but they are protecting the entire north and even beyond. And so it's in the interest of the people of Kano to actually comply. Burial ceremonies in this part of the country are very simple ceremonies, and you can simplify it further. Nobody says people must gather, people must do this, people must do that. We can maintain social distance, we can minimize the number of people that gather, and we can do that, and we can bury people using protective gear, you know, so that it's in our own interest.
Amara, I was just wondering, I mean, what's your take on the president's approach to the management of COVID-19? We have seen now that it is only in 4 places, the Federal Capital Territory and 3 states, Lagos, Ogun, and Kano, that you are now having a federally mandated lockdown. Every other state, the president says, look, use your own discretion, as it were, take into consideration your own local circumstances, but let this be in sync with the guidelines spelled out by the Federal Ministry of Health, the NCDC, as well as the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. How does this, in your opinion, gel, you know, with ensuring that at the roots, you know, subnational entities, they are able to deal with those issues head on, rather than saying, oh, we're all waiting for the federal government and so on and so forth?
No, I think people sometimes misunderstand the role of the president in a situation like this. What the president needs to do as the leader of the country is to provide sufficient political will for all these different agencies and structures of intervention to function effectively. That's his primary role in this matter. And to that extent, I believe that, you know, he had provided sufficient political will and support to the agencies that are supposed to intervene and to structures that are supposed to intervene. And the most critical of these structures are the subnational leadership. And the last broadcast and this broadcast, he acknowledged the role of the governors in ensuring that the process moves forward. You see, he cannot achieve anything in a federation that we have, with the kind of constitution we have, unless he enlists the support of the governors and he gets the buy-in of the governors. And the only way to get the buy-in of the governors is to allow them some leeway to operate based on their special circumstances and peculiarities. But don't forget that he did not abdicate the fact that he is the national leader. And so he says interstate travel, for example, are restricted, you know, so that...
that was, in fact, a suggestion also made by
the governors themselves.
The governors forum, yes.
Exactly. So, and because the governors realized that, you know, I'm a governor of state A, I cannot stop people entering state B. That is a national matter. They brought it to the president, and the president very graciously agreed with them that it's necessary, you know, to use the presidential power at that level. But at the level of their interventions in their states, unless it gets out of hand, the president is supposed to allow them also exercise their leadership to the best of their abilities. Because, of course, you know, each of the leaders elected at various levels has some level of responsibility to his own constituents. And that's what the president is doing. But like I told you, Lagos and Kano have the capacity to impact nationally on their own. If you allow Lagos, Lagos can impact nationally. If you allow Kano, Kano can impact nationally. So to that extent, the president must bring to bear his capacity as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Okay, Abasajo, thanks a lot. I mean, we've also seen what is happening to neighboring Kaduna. Neighboring Kaduna has extended its lockdown by another 30 days, beginning yesterday, I believe. And then 5 of their Almajiris who were transferred from Kano to Kaduna are said to have tested positive to COVID-19. But I'm sure that there will be a number of issues that will come up, in the succeeding days with regard to the federal government's intervention in Kano. I mean, Kano had been in the news. We've also been on top of the Kano situation all the while. But right now, I think that everybody will be delighted that the federal government is stepping in.
There's just one thing that the states must do, and this is a direct appeal to all the states. By the time the lockdown is eased a little by next week, there is a need for the states to study what is happening, with the easing of the lockdown and the level of compliance with the guidelines that will be set out, so that they too can key into that, because like the president said, no economy can survive at a sustained lockdown for over a period of time. And most importantly, we must be able to do something about agriculture so that we do not fall into the trap of food insecurity.
Incidentally, that's our second topic for discussion. On that note, Masaje would like to thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, so it's Good Morning Nigeria, still live on the network service of Africa's largest television network. We take a short break now. Where we return, topic number 2.
The Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, under the leadership of its President General, His Eminence, the Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Muhammad Saad Abubakar, CFR MNI, congratulates the Muslim Ummah on the commencement of the fasting of the month of Ramadan, beseeching Allah to grant us the blessings of the month and to inscribe us among the inhabitants of Al-Jannah. The Council has directed the suspension of congregational Taraweeh prayers, Majalis al-Tafsir, Quranic sessions, and i'tikaf seclusion in the mosques during the month of Ramadan. Islamic scholars and organizations are to employ the electronic media for dissemination of tafsir and other da'wah activities. Janazah, washing, shrouding, prayer and burial of Muslim victims are to be carried out by officials of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, and other government health officials. Detailed guidelines on the suspension and the janazah are available on the Council's website and are being published in national dailies and sent to the federal and state governments as well as leadership of state councils and various Islamic organizations. The Quran says, "Make not your own hands contribute to your destruction." His Eminence the Sultan praised the Almighty Allah to preserve our lives beyond the Ramadan and grant us its blessings. Mr. Yusuf Nwoha, Director Administration, Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, announcer.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide, don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 22 55 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
Wetin be this coronavirus thing? Na true?
You see this coronavirus wey be COVID-19. Na the whole world palava, and e don dey kill many people for China, Italy, UK, US, Spain, and even for other countries dem.
Okay, wetin come be the reason wey dem say make everybody tanda for house?
Na because if e dey waka pium go carry am from person wey don get am, you go carry come give your family dem. Na so the thing take dey kill other people for other countries.
Okay, wetin come be that social distancing sef?
You see social distance. Now make we no come close because this thing na from air and touch now we dey contact am. We suppose dey at least 6 foot away from each other every time.
So okay, no be only to wash your hand and to sanitize them alone.
Make we no take this washing of hand thing take play but make we come together, join hand as we take pursue Ebola, pursue this coronavirus. Make we be each other be keepers now.
Welcome back, and now to our second issue for discuss, which is COVID-19 and food security. And to begin the discussion, let's take this background put together by Musa Baba Aliu.
COVID-19 was first reported at a very crucial time of famine in Nigeria, as it falls on the peak of dry season farming activities. These farmers say the high supply of vegetables coupled with low demand in the north were major challenges to dry season farmers this year.
The farmers that are doing irrigation farming, they have already planted since around December, January, in which they are expecting to harvest their product by this time around. But because of this problem now, some of them, they cannot be able to access to their farms.
This year's rainy season is here already, just as the virus known as COVID-19 is still in the country. Even though most states are under lockdown, the federal government says measures put in place to eradicate the ravaging virus will not affect farming activities.
Hence, the need to put in place a strategy to facilitate free movement of food and agricultural inputs nationwide to avoid food shortages and ensure 2020 production season is not hampered.
To this end, the federal government has directed that fertilizer should now be sold to farmers at 5,000 naira against the current price of 5,500 naira.
The PFI has now expanded its scope to also produce other blends of NPK fertilizer to cater for the diverse fertilizer requirements of Nigerian farmers.
Ministry of Science and Technology is pushing for the production of more than 1 million early maturing yam seedlings to be distributed to farmers. Government directs that farmers should be allowed access to their farms in any part of the country.
Thank you very much, Musa Baba Aliu, for that background. With us in the studios to discuss this issue, let's welcome Engineer Abdullahi Garba Abubakar. He is Director of Mechanization of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. Engineer, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Also here with us in the studio is Professor Akim Oyerinde. He's Head of Department of Crop Protection, Faculty of Agriculture here at the University of Abuja. Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you.
Okay.
And also joining us from our MENA studio is Dr. Aliu Umar, Executive Director, National Cereals Research Institute, Badegi, Niger State. Good to have you join us on the program.
Good morning.
Kabir Ibrahim, President, All Farmers Association of Nigeria. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. Architect Kabir Ibrahim, President, All Farmers Association of Nigeria. Let's begin with you via Skype from Katsina. What is your association feeling and reading at this time? This is 4 months into 2020, do we face any risk of food insecurity on account of coronavirus? And if so, how?
We definitely are fearful that there may be serious food shortage as the year goes on, and 2021 might even be a problem. But there is concerted effort, and we are calling on all farmers to please go back to their farms in spite of the vicissitudes on their path, to clear their land and start the planting season. In some areas, the rainy season has already begun. We are looking forward to some assistance from government in terms of improved seed, fertilizers, both inorganic and organic, water pumps for irrigation, and let us be able to even do agriculture all year round. Unless we upscale our production, there is every chance that there may be food shortage as the year runs along. UN has predicted that there may be famine in Nigeria among other countries. So we have to really wake up to this responsibility. And to this end, we say there should be a task force on food security to make sure that there will be no hunger in Nigeria. Unless something is done urgently, we will not be able to contain what will happen if the pandemic causes hunger. The hunger is a better and bigger killer than the pandemic of the COVID-19. We have 200 million mouths to feed. Unless we have food internally, we will not be able to do that because we will not be able to import any food from any other country. Every country is on its own. We must be able to produce what we eat here and eat what we produce here. So a lot of work has to be done. Government has to wake up, invest properly, in fact, invest disruptively in the production of food. We have been invited by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to highlight those areas of food crops where we need assistance to be able to scale our production. We have submitted this list. We expect that action shall have commenced in terms of improved seed, fertilizers, other inputs like agrochemicals, and the pumps, as I have said. These are yet to start, but we are urging the government to start this without any further delay. The extension people, I had a virtual meeting with them, like I'm having this program with you, with Narils, with Agra, with Global 2000 and all that. Everybody is waking up to the fact that we need good extension, we need mechanization. And by mechanization, we may not be able to import any tractors or any agricultural machinery into Nigeria today. So we have to look around for all those that are broken down, reinvigorate the technology incubation centers to be able to repair what we have and get our local fabricators to even start work on some of these things, harness whatever we have internally, put it all to food production. Then we will turn the tide. We will not have the feared food shortage that the UN has talked about. It is very, very important that we tackle this issue of food in Nigeria. Otherwise, it will be another pandemic.
You earlier said that farmers are being told to go back to the farms and, start farming. What I would like to know is what is the level of sensitization and awareness on social distances in order to curb and stop the spread of COVID-19, even among farmers?
Telling them, we are present in 774 local governments, and the leadership is being sensitized to this. We are all queuing into what the NCDC is doing. We are doing radio programs. I am addressing farmers in many, many fora to enable them to understand how to prevent the COVID-19 pandemic. Because if you are sick, you cannot go to the farm. If you fall ill on the farm, everything will just go bad. So everybody has to take you on what the NCDC is always talking about: social distancing, hygiene, avoiding crowding, and using facial masks. You must do that. Every farmer has to do that. You have to be well to be able to produce food. And you are producing this food not only for yourself, but for all Nigeria. And you have to own agricultural production. The government does not have farms. The individuals have farms. It's a private sector matter. And we will get there. We will make good money if we produce food. This is the advice that we give farmers. Farmers have to know that agriculture is a business and it must be treated as such. There is a vacuum now. There is a possibility to cut a niche. They take advantage of it. That's what we are telling them continuously. I'm sure the FRCN and other media are showing and broadcasting what we have been saying.
All right. Thank you very much, Architect Kabir Ibrahim. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Professor Akim Oyerinde, I mean, looking at the situation realistically, have we already lost the 2020 cropping season, or we stand the risk of losing the 2020 cropping season, or there are things that we can still do to maximize the 2020 cropping season?
The farmer president, the situation at which we are in agric now calls for rejuvenation. Because the first thing is that the same set of farmers that we are talking about, that we are relying on, most of them have even started feasting, eating their seeds. Because traditionally, small stakeholder farmer, they are the majority of farmers that we have in Nigeria. And you'll find out that because of the lockdown, that for close to about 1 month now, some of them, palliative did not get to them. So they are now getting back into what they have stored for planting. But the major thing is there is no, in a situation where you have problem, there must be a solution. The government, knowing the calibers of people that are doing farming in Nigeria, they are the poorest of the poor. What the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, what they are doing is for about 2.6 million. Out of, majorly, we have about 75% of Nigerians into agriculture, into farming. So it means that we must, since the president have expanded that into a 3.6 million, that is not adequate enough. Because I know that what usually happen is that you have some of the migratory farmer, that's what I call them, that we usually, when during the dry season, they come down. Immediately it's getting to the wet season, they go back to their villages, especially up north, and now start agricultural activity. Those kind of people now, with this lockdown, will not have the opportunity of crossing states. So, and if they are not doing that, it means we are now having reduction in the manpower. But the solution to our agriculture is because we've relied so much on rain-fed agriculture for quite a long time. The agriculture in the world, being a business, is mainly mechanization that can solve our problem. We have viable land, we have a good climate that can support our rain-fed agriculture. But the issue of not farming throughout the year becomes a problem. If you are only farming for 2, 3, up to 6 months, with that sustained feeding 200 million people, one of the states, I think that's Rivers State, ask everybody that have agri-commodity, grains and others, bring it, and the governor bought them. It means that it's looming that there will be scarcity. Because those people are storing those things so that when their produce have not come out, their family will live on that. But now, because of enticement of money, they've released those items to the buyers because they are now seeing that as an opportunity. But if that is not available, it means that the farmer will be hungry, and an hungry man is an angry man. When you are hungry, you will not even have the strength to go and do the farming, because the farming that they are doing is still majorly depending on cutlasses and hoes now. I think this is the lesson from this COVID-19 thing is that we should be realistic about this our diversification, about concentrating on this agriculture. Because agriculture has so much opportunity that it can give us to get more money. When you think about cocoa and other products that are coming from agri, you even find out that the oil that we are relying on will not give us as much money as those products. So the issue that government should concentrate on is that, let's say after post-COVID-19, how do we mechanize our agricultural practice in this country? Because if we don't mechanize, if we don't have value to what we are producing, we will be producing at a loss. As of today in Nigeria, the raw material that most of our industries are using is being imported. So it becomes a problem because now they don't have where they will import the raw materials from. So it means we have to domesticate and start producing largely in Nigeria. And if we have to do that, you can only produce largely when you have mechanized agriculture. But people usually talked about the issue of when you have parcel of land, that you cannot have large hectare of land where the tractors will work. But these are issues that our Agri Extension as well as Ministry of Agri can work on, where we can have cluster. When you cluster farmers together, you can have the length where the tractors can work and it will be productive. That is the reality, and that is the only way that we can have food security.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Hakim. I will now come to Engineer Abdullahi Garba Abubakar. They've talked about mechanized farming, being the in thing now since they cannot import. And the President yesterday in his speech said, we reviewed how farmers can safely plant and harvest in this rainy season to ensure our food security. So what kind of stimulus is going to be rolled out by government to aid and help these farmers when they start farming?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jumai. Actually, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, based on this COVID-19, is working out a model as to how we can really intervene in terms of even the lockdown that we are talking about. Measures are being taken to make sure that farmers are not hindered from going to their farms. Trucks moving with seeds or seedlings are not also prevented. There is a task force that has been set up to look into that one. And the ministry is really working on that to see that the difference we are having in terms of rain in the south and rainy season in the north is taken care of. As I'm talking to you now, some of the farmers in the south are going to the farm already because the rains has already commenced. But for the north, there are still some time. So we are trying to see that the inputs are moved there, very close to them, so that the moment the rain starts, they can go to the farm easily. And we are also praying that the COVID-19 will ease out immediately after this 1 week that Mr. President has said, so things will be relaxed. So the relaxation, I'm sure, will also entice farmers to go back to farm and to be able to cultivate their lands. Even though the issue that Prof has raised is very valid, the mechanization is not yet there because most of our smallholder farmers cannot even afford to procure the tractors and the machineries. But the ministry, in its deliberate effort, has made up a scheme we call the Agricultural Equipment Hiring Enterprise, where it could be a business person that will have 5 or more tractors, which he can now set it up in a village that people can come and access the services. You will be able to pay at least a token for either 1 hectare or less than a hectare, because most of our smallholder farmers have 1 or less hectares that they can at least crop on. Based on the issue of small farms that tractors will not be able to maneuver, we have encouraged them to be in clusters now. So the farmers that are being targeted are those that have their farms in clusters, where the tractors can plow or harrow the land easily. And then you could put a demarcation. Everybody knows how many hectares he has, or less 0.5 hectares or whatever. So it is deliberate that now the ministry has foreseen this issue of problem coming into the farming season. But the steps are being taken to alleviate the problem.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer Abdullahi. Let's go over to our studios where we are introduced Dr. Ali Umar, is Executive Director of the Nigerian Serious Research Institute, also based in Niger State. Dr. Umar, tell us, what's your reading of the situation in terms of the impact of COVID-19 on Nigeria's food security?
Thank you very much. Previous speakers have painted the scenario about the food situation in the country, and it is not a very encouraging story at all. But I want to say that the story is much more dangerous than the scenario having been painted. Nigeria is part of that part of the vast agroecological expanse known as Sub-Saharan Africa. And this zone is known to be faced with chronic food deficits, occasioned by low agricultural productivity, fast population growth, which has outpaced, food production. Also, the well-known phenomenon of climate change and global warming and armed conflicts, have contributed to make this region to be faced with chronic food deficits. Fortunately, the present administration, has taken some measures, because even before the advent of coronavirus, otherwise known as COVID-19, food security has always been serious in this region. What the coming of the COVID-19 has done is to have pushed Nigeria and this vast agroecological zone into the edge of the precipice, that unless something is done, and urgently too, it's not going to be funny at all, because food security, in whatever perspective we look at it, we discover that we're far away from the reality. Is it from the point of view of the quantitative intake, the calories that we take in, which is about 2,500 for adult male or 2,000 for adult female? We discover that we are not taking enough, in quantitatively. Qualitatively too, the scenario is the same thing. The type of food ingredient that we inject, are far from being balanced. So we are in a precarious, food situation, brought about by this COVID-19. And unless something is done, like I said before, we're not going to find it easy at all. Unfortunately, the federal government has taken some initiatives in the immediate past. That is access, to credit to the farmers. It is very, 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 very important. What needs to be done in addendum now is for the government to invest massively, in infrastructure. And to be specific, is irrigation, which has been mentioned, by the previous, contributors in this program. Our agriculture is rain-fed. In spite of the fact that irrigated agriculture, the productivity is far, far greater than that of the rain-fed agriculture. So government needs to invest massively in the irrigation facilities, which are spread across the length and breadth of this country. Unfortunately, most of these irrigation facilities are obsolete, as a result of wear and tear, and a lot of maintenance is required. So apart from the maintenance of this obsolete irrigation infrastructure, the government, as a matter of necessity, need to establish new ones, because the productivity of irrigated agriculture triples that of rain-fed agriculture. Take the case of rice, for instance. Under rain-fed agriculture, the yield of rice could be about 2.5 tons per hectare. But while it is under irrigated, the yield could be as high as 4.5 to 5 tons per hectare. The reason being that you are able to control the factors of production. Flood, which is an incessant phenomenon in this country, is checked if you have irrigation structures in place. The same thing applies with the drainage. So if irrigation, is given the needed attention, I think it will go a long way to address some of this issue. Another issue is the infrastructure, is the feeder route. Most of the production interland, the production hubs, are located far into hinterlands, where, hearing access, to those centers, is very difficult. On such roads, you could hardly do 10 kilometers per hour. That is to say, even if you are trekking, you pass a vehicle that is plying the same road. So, and these roads are needed to convey the inputs into those farmlands where the farmlands are located. And then at the harvest, this access roads becomes very, very important because you need to convey out some of this excess, produce. The situation is such that because of the poor access road, what we have a situation where animals are used to convey excess, produce out of the farmlands. So access roads, irrigation facilities are very, very important. And in the developed world, the importance of irrigated agriculture is very well known, and they have invested massively in it. Like in the Asian countries that are food secure today, about 40% of the lands are under irrigation, compared to African countries for which Nigeria is a component, where equivalent of just about 7% is under irrigation. So irrigated agriculture is very, very, very productive, and we need to address it headlong post-COVID-19.
Thank you so much for your input. We'll now go back to the President, All Farmers Association of Nigeria, Architect Kabir Ibrahim. A lot of experts, you've listened to our conversation now in the studio, and experts are saying that government needs to roll out some economic stimulus for farmers. Professor Akim now said some farmers are already eating the grains they've kept for planting. So if that happens, what is the case of Nigeria in case of food security in the face of COVID-19? What will happen?
It's trouble for us. That's why we said the letter that we put out to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture asking for support in terms of improved seed, agrochemicals, like fertilizers, both organic and inorganic and all that, are supposed to help us to upscale our production. Let me digress a little. The food reserve is part of the food security of the country. We have depleted it by 70,000 metric tons. That translates to about 700 million kilograms. In Nigeria, it is adjudged and believed and mentioned by this government that there are over 100 million of us in poverty. Distributing 70 million kilograms of food will only give every one of us who is poor 0.7 kg. That is nothing. The president has asked for whatever rice we have got that the customs has got from the smugglers and all that should also be distributed. Part of that rice is said to be already expired. So there is no food in actual fact. The only way out is for us to produce, even if it takes a special intervention from government, dipping its hands into its foreign reserve to be able to provide for the farmers what they will produce, what they will use to produce food. It is very, very important to do that. That is why we are calling for a special intervention in terms of food security. Let there be a special advisor appointed today to do nothing else but ensure food security. This has happened, when Obasanjo was the president, he had an SA food security, even when he had Malam Adamu Bello as the Minister for Agriculture. At that time, we had the AI pandemic, if you remember, bird flu. I was the president of Poultry Association at that time. The poultry business at that time had a capital base of $2 million, but it was being eroded completely by AI. Some measures were put in place. Compensation to the farmers were done up to the extent of 1,500 ultimately. And this happened because of what we said in BBC and in several media like yours, that the laying bird would be compensated at least 1,000. So we were lucky to get 1,500, and everybody went back into business. And that sector is thriving today. The total food system of Nigeria depends on food production, and this year is very critical for us because we cannot import food from anywhere. We must have the food here. I'm happy the director of mechanization is here. He knows the real fact about mechanization. He knows what can be done. Let government listen to him. Let his advice permeate the system, the food system. Let there be mechanization. Automation as a whole will bring the best out of us. We have 84 million cultivable land. Let us expand it. We are just using about 40% of it. Let us expand our cultivable land. Let us expand our irrigable land. Let us do all year round agriculture. Let there be food in Nigeria. Look, food in Nigeria means food in Africa. Food in Africa means food in the world. Come 2050, the population of the world is going to be 2050. Don't mind that about 200 million, thousand of us have died now. The population is still very great. By 2050, the world will be so large. The population will be so large. The dependence on food will be very, very high. So we must not joke with this. If it is the only thing we do, let us bring money from our foreign reserve, address the issue of production, address all the cross-cutting issues around agriculture and around processing and all that. Look at the power sector. Look at transportation. Look at science and tech. Look at all these things. The whole gamut of all these things will have to be addressed.
I just wondering, Architect Kabe Ibrahim, very briefly, because we have to come back to other guests in our studios. While it is useful to, as it were, sketch a worst-case scenario for our food security, one would like to also interrogate perhaps some specifics. You are in Katsina, and the Katsina state government has taken a number of measures in seeking to contain COVID-19. What information do you have with regard to farmers who are in rural areas? I'm not saying that disobedience pays, but we do know that part of the challenge that we are facing with containing COVID-19 is that oftentimes the restriction orders are held more in the breach. So do we have a situation where, say, in the rural areas, the lockdown is ineffectual? Kaduna State has been on lockdown for a while. They further extended it, and Kaduna is also very rich in terms of agriculture. What do you know? Are people still just going to the farms and just say, look, particularly in the rural areas, so that the worst-case scenario might not materialize?
The situation is very, very, very different. The governor is a farmer. All the committee members on COVID-19 are farmers. We realize that we are 100% agrarian. People have to go and work on the farms for us to be able to feed ourselves. So there is a structured visitation to the farms by people, preparing their lands and all that. Mind you, the rains have not yet set here, but preparations are underway to make sure that whatever we need, the farmers need in the rural areas, arrives on time. And the people are going to the farms to do clearing and all that. And as time goes on, they will be able to access their farms. Because if we don't, we cannot feed ourselves. I told you, you have a choice between the devil and the deep blue sea. Either you die of the pandemic or you die of hunger. So you must fashion a way and a safe way of being able to go to the farm and to produce. In Katsina State, they are doing wonderfully well. I have had interviews with FRCN, which is in the public domain. I have even this morning I went to my farm. My people are there, resident on the farm now, because of fear that they might be stopped. We are doing livestock. You cannot tell chicken to wait until tomorrow for it to eat, or the large ruminants, or our fish. So we must be there. We must be there. There is no way we cannot be there. The animals will die otherwise. So these are issues that, whether they are mentioned or not, the reality is that people have to go to the farms. And we are going to the farms. In Katsina State, I am happy to say that we have the full cooperation of the government, and everybody is able to access their farms.
All right. Thank you very much, Kabe Ibrahim. Very quickly, Jumai, yes. Professor Akim Oyerinde mentioned something very significant about the migratory farm hands who normally would live from one part of the country to the other to assist with farming. Now, my question is going to Engineer Abdullahi Garba. we are saying as part of the containment measures for COVID-19, lockdown in states, and now there's restriction on interstate travels, except for essential services or very essential movements. We've had access, for agricultural produce all the while, but it appears that no consideration had earlier been given to migratory farm hands who may be moving from one part of the country to the other. We had seen some vehicles being stopped. We had passengers inside those vehicles, articulated trucks, and so on and so forth. How might a special dispensation be created for this category of persons so that they can move, and be the right farm hands and then ensure our food security on the one hand? And on the other hand, how do you screen them? Because amongst the Amajiris, for instance, repatriated from Kano to Kaduna, 5 of them have COVID-19.
Well, that is a wake-up call, actually. This scenario he painted is very clear. Normally, those that normally go to one side of the country for their other businesses will do that during the dry season. The moment the rainy season is setting in, they come back in order to go to the farm. I think this is an issue that, as I leave this place, I will take it up with that committee that are handling this issue of movement of goods and services. We have to find a way to factor in that particular issue, even if it means, well, I'm sure our enforcement agents, with a reasonable explanation, they will be able to understand those that are really going back to engage themselves into the farming. So that is a scenario that has already been brought out, and I'm sure the ministry will look into it in conjunction with the task force that is going to be set up. In addition to that, we already know that there are some people that have migrated already, because they have already know that the farming season is around the corner. Before this lockdown in all the states, at least we are aware the lockdown was in only 2 states and the FCT earlier on. So some people have already moved, trying to set up their farms, because the clearing of the farm has already commenced. People that really have the intention. The only problem I am looking at is the issue of seeds. Based on what Prof is saying, those that have reserved their own seed, which they want to plant, have started eating it because of the lockdown. We are in conjunction with the National Agricultural Seed Council to make sure that the seeds they have already produced for the season is being transported. So definitely, even if it means to create some level of subsidy, though we sell it with subsidy earlier on, but maybe to increase the level of subsidy so that those farmers that do not anticipate buying seeds can at least have access to those seeds, buy them, and then they can plant those seeds. And it is already clear that if we even have the hybrid seeds, you get almost twice your yield, provided you have put into practice all the agronomic practices that are supposed to be done. So it is going to even help them, because they will see that they have increased yield despite they don't use their own seed. They bought seed from the maybe seed dealers, so to speak.
Okay, thank you so much. We have a number of tweets that just came in, and okay, we'll be going to Mina, actually, where he's standing by. And coming to you in Mina, Dr. Aliu Umar, Executive Director, National Cereals Research Institute, Padiki, Niger State. The president in his speech said that the government has set up a food security committee on the lockdown. How do you think this will roll out? Yeah, we'll be talking about mechanized farming, Okay.
The rains are already around the corner. Farming season, cotton season.
About mechanized farming, Okay.
So it is actually.
The rains are already.
Okay, so it is the right step in the right directions, because rainy cropping season has already begun in part of the south. It's about to set in the middle belt, and much later around the far north. So the labor force that will carry out this farming operation will actually need to be mobilized, and the security outfits, that check the compliance with the COVID-19 movement need to really understand this. And I hope that the agricultural experts are part of those committee. They actually need to work in tandem so that while the security people will not understand an issue, the agricultural experts, in that committee will need to, sensitize them and then educate them on the need, on why they have to move. It is very, very essential. Otherwise, the situation is going to be, very, very gory, has, been painted already.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali Umar, for your response. But let's come back to Professor Akim Oyerinde. Just before we do that, my colleague was indicating that we have a number of tweets. You're speaking to issues that our guests are already addressing, and as you very well know, to this edition of the program is fairly abridged because we had to repeat the president broadcast this morning, and that took about 20 minutes. Professor Akim Oyerinde, talking more seriously about food security, tell us, why shall we say, a year's disruption to the agricultural season precipitate a food security crisis for us as a people? I'm asking this, yes, I recognize that the president of World Farmers Association says that, look, this is so much that has been moved out of our strategic reserve. But why should, a year's disruption cause panic? What is fundamentally amiss and therefore we also need to fix going forward?
I think the major problem we've been having with agricultural practice has been the post-harvest losses. Because when we are factoring in agricultural production, at most time we don't think of how do we handle the product, whether it's livestock or it's crop. Because there was a Pathfinder International report in 2013 that gave a value of Nigeria losing over 67% of our produce because they are perishable and there's no storage. So the reason why we are shivering, why we are thinking this pandemic is eating so much on us is that we've not stored enough and we've not preserved enough. What we are doing is most of the time when we have our agri products, most of the products get due to bacteria and a host of organisms, virus inclusive, we destroy those products. And when they destroy them, like before we were on set, Jumai was talking about the locusts, that we are very fortunate that locusts did not get to us. But whether we like it or not, whether locusts get to us or it's not getting to us, we should be preparing for armyworm. There are so many other pests that can attack our products. The director from Mina himself is an entomologist too. He knows the impact of when you have infestation of insects or quail bugs. This will deplete the yield that you can have. But consequently, if we're able to assist the farmer to build their capacity on how, because I remember in 2013 there was a research we did on indigenous preservation techniques in Abuja here. And we find out that the Gwari people even have the plants that they are using to protect their crops. So these are the kind of things that at this period that we cannot bring products from outside. We cannot bring products from India and a host of other countries, China and others. We should domesticate developing what we have. If we don't do that, we'll be in a more pandemic than the COVID-19. That's the main thing. So for the future, we should be thinking of expanding our storage capacity and expanding our post-harvest management of our agricultural products.
Okay, thank you so much, Engineer Abdullah. You were going to respond to that.
Yes, I think what he's saying is really apt. Like the stock we have in our grain reserve, actually the procurement last year was not to its maximum. We have about only 100,000 metric tons that has been stored. So I think the planning will start now to make sure that we are making very good use of this strategic grain reserve silos in all the states so that we can store more food in the event of this eventuality. Thank God we even have the 100,000 metric tons, where we have been able to take away about 70,000 metric tons. If it were to be year before last, it would have been really a crisis. But the government saw it wise to really stock in the 100,000 metric tons, which actually it has been very helpful now.
All right, Engineer Abdullahi Garba Abubakar, Director of Mechanization, Federal Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, would like to thank you for being part of this discussion. But we do hope that as the task force is working on this, that the subnational entities are also on the same page. Because part of the issues we keep hearing and we keep feeling, it's the lag in the subnational entities with regard to agriculture. Thank you very much for being part of this conversation.
Thank you.
And Head of Department of Crop Protection at the University of Abuja, Professor Akim Oyerinde, thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you, sir.
Via Skype from Katsina, who were joined by our regular guests, President of Farmers Association of Nigeria, Architect Kabir Ibrahim. Architect Kabir Ibrahim, thank you very much. We hope that you keep the poultry very well, because those ones cannot be quarantined unless, of course, we have some affliction with them, and we don't pray for that. From Mina, our studios there in Niger State, we were joined by Dr. Ali Omar, Executive Director of the Ceres Research Institute. Thank you for being around on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, so that does it for us today on the program. We are back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, stay safe and stay well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Juma Yusuf. Follow all the procedures of the NCDC and fight to live. Thanks for watching.